So I'm waiting for the 5th District City Councilor to come in. I don't see him. Jimmy, have we heard from the Councilor Driscoll?
No, not as of yet.
Okay. He might have trouble getting over the border from the Republic of Ireland to Ulster, so I don't know. He's over in Ireland there, Owen.
Is he? I did.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor had mentioned he was out of the country. That sounds pretty scenic right now.
Well, I don't know.
As much as I enjoy being here with all of you, that does sound nice.
He's in Derry.
Owen left out the jealous tone that the deputy.
I don't know if I would want to be in Derry in January, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give him a couple of minutes to see if he can access this. He was at our couple. He was able to come into our finance committee meeting, but in lieu of that, I know I see Councilor Schultz is here. Councilor Gathers. We have almost. I don't see any other councilors. Let me see here. Ba-ba.
Councilor Allen's here.
Councilor Allen is here. Okay.
Hello.
Oh, Councilor Allen. Well, he can join us. What I'm gonna do is this concerns our Common Council book agenda. The item was item 18, and it's the contract with EDR regarding Empire State Development funded project around LeMoyne College campus and the adjacent neighborhoods. I'm Pat Hogan. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and I'm joined by some fellow councilors. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Owen, exactly what the plan is as far as around that LeMoyne College campus. And I was called, this meeting was called at the behest of Councilor Driscoll, and hopefully he'll join us at some point.
Just to clarify, it was number 18 from the January 10th meeting. So
January 10th. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jim.
Just to avoid confusion.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilor Hogan, Jim, and councilors. Hopefully Councilor Driscoll can make it. This is largely focused on within his district, the 5th district. I'm going to share my screen. We have a presentation today, and just confirm that you all are able to see that. All right. Can you guys see that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I got it. So again, thank you, councilors. Thanks everybody for being here today. The focus of our discussion is a presentation and discussion about the LeMoyne area neighborhood development strategy. Again, we've got a presentation here. Hang on just a second. I'd like to begin by introducing and going over our partnerships, which is really critical to this project. This is a planning study that's focused on the area in and around LeMoyne campus, which, as you know, is in both the town of DeWitt and the city of Syracuse on the east side. And a few years ago, LeMoyne approached the city and said, we would like to work with you and work with the town on strengthening the area around us. How can we be better neighbors? How can we serve the residents and the businesses around us in a way that really strengthens this neighborhood? And obviously we share that interest in doing so. So we partnered with LeMoyne College, and some representatives are here from LeMoyne. Both Steve Kulik in the president's office over at LeMoyne is on the call, and Fuad Dietz, who is their director of campus planning, are on the call today with us. And we work very closely with both LeMoyne College and the town of DeWitt. I believe Nick from the town planning office is here. Yep, thanks, Nick. And so the three partners kicked off this project with funding from Empire State Development to look at this neighborhood in the town and the city. We started by working with a team of project experts that were led by local planning, design, and engineering firm EDR. and EDR is represented today by our project manager, Sam Gordon, who many of you know. Sam has the benefit of not only being a great planner, but also was the town planner in DeWitt. So really knows this area well and brought that expertise to the plan. CNS was also part of the team that looked very closely at infrastructure in this area. And finally, Alice Mann Consulting did a lot of the data collection and analysis. And Alice is a former city resident and city employee, was with NBD a few years ago. For any of us old timers that were there, Alice did great work when she was here and did great work for us on this project. So that's really who was involved at the project team level. And then the area. This is the study area is really bound by Erie Boulevard along the northern edge and the western boundary as it sort of goes into the town of DeWitt, East Genesee Street along the south, and Sealy Road generally to the east. Now you can see that sort of highlighted area immediately around campus, sort of that black line. That was really our focused area. And that area immediately around the LeMoyne campus, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really positioned right half in the town and half in the city. So a unique collaboration to look at this area. It's also an anchor institution in this area. It's really surrounded by neighborhoods. Obviously, Erie Boulevard and East Genesee Street aren't far away, but the area, the campus is really bounded on all sides by residential areas. So we wanted to look very closely at that. That said, there has been a lot of work both at the campus level. The college has extensive master planning on campus that Fuad and his team have led that effort really over the past few years. And as you all know, the town of DeWitt and the city of Syracuse having updated our comprehensive plans and either have updated our zoning or in the process of updating our zoning. So the area has not been without a planning eye cast towards it, but really what we wanted to focus on is kind of that specific neighborhood level, thinking about housing, thinking about infrastructure, thinking about quality of life in this area and the area adjacent to the LeMoyne campus. So that's what we did. Sam is going to take over here briefly and talk about all of this in more detail, but a few of the broad elements that we looked at. We did a neighborhood housing market study, something that I know Michael Collins and his team are going to do really on the citywide level here in the near future. But we looked at housing conditions, housing market in this area, which is fairly unique in both instances. We looked at infrastructure, street trees, sidewalks, crosswalks, parks, safety. We looked very closely at that. There was extensive data collection, as I mentioned earlier. And finally, a big part of this outreach, you can do all this data collection and observation, but a big part of this was talking to residents. This is a residential area, and the residents have a lot of pride in this area. And so much of this work was done in late 2020 and early 2021, which, as you all know, was kind of at the height of the pandemic. So we did not hold our typical in-person community meetings that we might have at H.W. Smith School or Sewell Branch Library. And what we did instead was shift to online engagement. And while we were sort of apprehensive about doing so, the project team developed an extensive neighborhood survey looking at the residential experience, the physical environment, housing, LeMoyne College campus and the community, and a map. And developed, and this survey, anybody that wants to see it is actually still active. We can point you to that. But we had 300 participants in that survey. And all of us, I think, on this call are pretty involved in neighborhood meetings, community meetings. If you have 30 or 40 people, you're doing all right. We had 10 times that. So we really kind of surpassed what we thought we would get as far as feedback. And we got a lot of great neighborhood, resident, and property owner feedback about what's working, what's not working, what are community assets, and what are areas that need more work. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sam to walk through some of that data, the findings, and some recommendations in more detail, present that all to you. Obviously, counselors, if you have questions along the way, please let us know. But if not, our goal is to wrap this up in about a half an hour and open it up to discussion.
Before we go on, Owen, I want to know if there's any elected officials from DeWitt or maybe from the county legislature. If there are, I want to make sure, or any employees of the town of DeWitt. I want to make sure that I recognize them if they are on that. So, hearing none.
Hello, Pat.
Yes.
Pat, this is Doug Miller. I'm the town engineer for the town of DeWitt, and I'm representing the town of DeWitt today. And we're very excited about the project, and we've been engaged in it. And Sam's worked with us before, and it looks like an exciting project. And any way we can help out, please let me know, and please reach out to me. I'll send you my contact information shortly.
Well, I think this is a great example of being, collaborative. We're, in the city, I like to see when we work collaboratively with our surrounding sister communities. So this is terrific. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Doug. And I know I should also mention, while not elected, Nick Koval is here, who is from the town planning office. Nick was somebody we work very closely with, in addition to Doug Miller. So we do have representation from the town. And with that, no further questions, Counselor. I'm gonna turn it over to Sam.
Go ahead.
You can't hear you, Sam.
How about now?
Yes.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Can you go back 2 slides?
Sure.
Great. So first thing, good morning, everyone. Owen mentioned that I was previously the planning director for the town of DeWitt. I was also previously a city employee.
That's right.
Started my career in the community development office back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Andy Maxwell, was part of the CNS team, was also a city employee. So we did between Alice Mann, Andy, and myself, there's a lot of a strong connection and a lot of history and knowledge about the city. So to develop this plan, there really were 2 things that we did. One was an extensive housing market analysis, and the other was an infrastructure assessment. So I'm gonna cover the results of these 2 things as we go through this presentation. So I want you to know that we were looking at kind of what are the data trends, and also what's there on the ground, and looking at kind of marrying those 2 analyses to start to develop some recommendations for improvements for the neighborhood. So let's go to skip forward. There we go. All right. So to start with, if we look at some of the housing analysis that we did, I think it's important to note, we know that the city of Syracuse experienced some significant population loss over the last several decades. We know more recently there's been some population gain. Throughout that, the neighborhoods in the LeMoyne College focus area has remained relatively stable in population. I think that's important to note. At the same time, there's been some decline in the number of households in the neighborhood. So there are changes that are happening. There's also been a change especially in the city neighborhoods, in owner occupancy. So there's been a decline in owner occupancy in the Salt Springs neighborhood, which is just to the west of the LeMoyne College campus. That's important to note, and we're going to get into some specific statistics that I think help to identify what maybe some of the issues are that are facing this neighborhood. Next slide. We also looked at the zoning in the area, which included zoning in the town of DeWitt as well as the city of Syracuse. And what we're showing on the screen right now is from the rezone project, and it's the proposed zoning that would cover the areas adjacent to LeMoyne's campus. So I don't know, Owen, if you can focus your cursor on the MX2 area. All right, so this MX2 area it's an area that's been identified for mixed use development. I think it's up to 4 stories, if I remember correctly. And it's directly adjacent to LeMoyne's campus, and the majority of the parcels, if not all the parcels that are shown here, are actually under the control of LeMoyne. They own the land. And that includes LeMoyne Plaza. Actually, the exception is the Soul Branch Library, or is it Soul Branch?
Yeah.
Soul Branch Library. So all the other parcels are controlled by LeMoyne. Obviously, LeMoyne Plaza is there, and LeMoyne is making a major investment in that LeMoyne Plaza to create a makerspace. One of the things that we heard through the neighborhood survey is there's a lot of interest on the part of residents of the broader neighborhood, but also the city residents specifically, and seeing some more neighborhood scale uses near campus and near the neighborhood. So this is an ideal area that's included in rezone, and I think meets some of the things that neighborhood residents were interested in seeing. So we did take a deep dive into the data for the neighborhood and housing sales. And one of the things that we identified is that there's a significant difference in the sale price for homes between, let's say we take a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and a 3-bedroom house with just 1.5 bathrooms, right? So if we start to look at sale prices, there's almost a $10,000 difference in sale price between homes with 1 bathroom and homes with 1.5 bathrooms. And if we start looking at 2 bathrooms or more, it goes up significantly more. It's really important to note because most of the homes in the Salt Springs area adjacent to campus only have 1 bathroom. There's a cost premium, and as we'll see later in our slides, actually a lot of the people who live in these neighborhoods are hoping to add a 1/2 bathroom or more. And I think it's understanding these kinds of really detailed in the weeds trends in the neighborhood that can help us to identify what some programmatic needs might be, some of the things that we could do to intervene in the housing market to help to strengthen the housing sales. Next slide. Connected to that is the fact that in the Salt Springs neighborhood, specifically, the census tract, what's shown here is census tract 3602. There have been no rehab mortgages made to the neighborhood. That means there's no lending happening to assist property owners with making improvements to their properties. This is significant, and I think, as we'll see from some of the later slides from the survey data, there's interest from folks in the neighborhood, from property owners, in making investments in their property, but they either don't have good credit, or they don't know where to go to get a loan, or they don't know how to go through the process because they haven't done it before. They can't identify a contractor. There's a lot of kind of barriers where I think there could be some interventions to help people to start to reinvest in their properties. Next slide. At the same time, what we heard from the neighborhood survey is that people like the neighborhood areas around campus. They like the homes. It's convenient to work. People are generally happy with the schools, or they're near family and friends. Generally, people had either thinking that the neighborhood was going to be about the same in the future, or there would be some improvement in the neighborhood, which is a good sign for folks. That may be a reason for people to want to reinvest in their properties. So these are some of the positive things that we've heard from the neighborhood survey. Next slide. We also heard very strongly from city residents that there was an interest in having some form of a neighborhood association for the Salt Springs neighborhood area. That's something that there isn't one. I don't think there's very strong participation from this neighborhood area in TNT, for example. So there's a lot of interest on the part of participants in seeing some sort of neighborhood association or advocacy group formed to help to support and strengthen the neighborhood. We also heard from people that they actually know their neighbors, and that there are things that they've done or would do to help their neighbors. And this is a really good sign of neighborhood strength and neighborhood health. When we're willing to reach out and help our neighbors, it's a sign that we really care about our neighborhood, and it's a place worth investing our time in. Next slide. Okay, so now we asked participants in the survey, you know, what kind of things would you like to see happen in the place where you live? And we did break it down by renters as well as homeowners. And you'll see from renters, what's the top thing that they would like to see in their rental property? Bathroom update. So that goes back to what I was pointing out earlier, the difference between one bathroom home and 1.5 bathroom home. Next slide. And when we start to look at owner occupied units, people are really needing to paint their homes, and they're also looking to do bathroom updates. And then some of the other things that you see on here are, you know, improving heating and insulation. It was the same for renters, investing in kitchens, roof repair, and appliance upgrades. So there definitely was a lot of interest on the part of homeowners to have resources or to be looking at making improvements to their properties. If we go to the next slide.
And Sam, I'll just briefly point out that we had 100 and at least in this section, 163 homeowners, which is not an insignificant amount of response. That is a good snapshot of property owners in this neighborhood sort of giving us feedback. So I just wanted to stress that point.
And I would go back to what you said before about if we had a neighborhood meeting, the likelihood that we would have gotten 160 people to come out to a neighborhood meeting is, I would say, very low for a plan like this. So that is a really good response to this survey. So we did also ask people about, you know, what steps might you have taken to reinvest in your home, or what are some things that you would welcome as resources in order to make investments. So there was a small percentage of owners that had applied for home improvement financing over the course of the past 5 years. But as we know, in the Salt Springs neighborhood specifically, there were no rehab loans that were made. So either folks from the neighborhood were denied, or, you know, for whatever reason they weren't able to move forward. Almost 60% of the respondents of 110 owners said that they would be interested in design services that would help them to add a bathroom or make other improvements to their home. And this is something from our work in other places that we have begun to understand is one of the barriers to making improvements to your home is actually not knowing how to even begin. So there's a program in the city of Rochester where they have a 1% loan product that attached to that, there are available design services. So you're going to want to make an investment in your home. You get the services of an architect to help you really design, you know, that half bath that you want to add, or maybe it's a kitchen renovation or otherwise, and that helps to facilitate that investment. So the next, in the lower left-hand corner, you see there was a lot of interest in seeing a low-interest loan product within the neighborhood, and this is something that's been done in the city of Syracuse before in other neighborhoods, and I think it's something that could have a lot of value for this, especially the Salt Springs area adjacent to campus.
Okay.
Sam, if I could interrupt a little bit, we have it. I believe Home Headquarters does a lot of this type of loans
Yeah.
for renovation. So I guess the problem is maybe folks aren't aware of it. Is that the conclusion we get from this, or what?
So Councilor Hogan, we met, I believe it was last week, with the leadership at LeMoyne. And that's exactly what needs to happen is an information campaign. There's a couple things going on. One is, I'm sure many people don't even realize the bevy of services that Home Headquarters can offer. So we have to make that connection and organize an information campaign for that community. The other issue is, Sam, you're absolutely right. There are some amazingly stable, strong homeowner communities right around the perimeter of LeMoyne, and we need to get them organized and so they have a common voice. And the last thing I'll say is that we need to really be deliberate in a strategy for protecting home ownership in this property, in this neighborhood, against speculation as the community begins to age in place, and we don't want to lose these potential, this great neighborhood to potential speculation in that community. So that's just a few things.
Well, that's great, Deputy Mayor. I'm glad you interjected there, but I maybe it's a situation where we reach out to TNT, or maybe Tony Borelli's group there. I'm having trouble.
Neighborhood Watch.
The Neighborhood Watch to maybe make inroads in that community, have something going there, and as part of it, maybe it's a situation where somebody from Home Headquarters can come in and explain exactly the menu of options some of these folks have. So
Councilor
something
Hogan.
that we'll talk about.
Councilor Hogan, this is LaToya.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
I'm threading and very thinly right here with my position over at Home Headquarters. But if that is something that we could do, we can definitely set it up. I know we do attend other TNT meetings, and it's just a matter of getting the information out there so that they'll know. But it's definitely something that we could work on to get it out there.
Councilor Hogan, Michael Collins, just wanted to add that Home Headquarters has attended actually one of the meetings with President LeMoyne to be able to talk about what products that they do have to offer, and as far on the lending side as well as what we're all talking about here on the community development side. So connections been made, working around some of the challenges related to the fact that these immediate neighborhoods are not qualified census tracts, so it does limit some of the ability to move some money in the neighborhoods in ways that on the other side of Celia are a little bit easier to do.
Thank you, Michael. So where we leave off here, Sam? I'm sorry, it's just virtual stuff sort of throws me sometimes. Or was it Owen?
No, I think it was me, Counselor, so thank you.
Okay.
And I appreciate the question, and I think to me, the most successful thing that can happen with a plan like this is that one, we uncover some bits of information that are important to help to understand what we can do, and two, that people start addressing it right away, and that is happening. The city's been very active, LeMoyne has been very active, and I know the town is very interested in understanding what steps need to be taken to start to begin to enact some of the things that are being recommended in the plan. So that's all good stuff. So the last lower right-hand corner of this slide, 80% of respondents it was 150 owners were thinking about making improvements in the next 5 years into their homes. So there is a lot of interest. I think there's need in the neighborhoods around campus. but especially in the Salt Springs area, it's about connecting people with the resources to be able to make those improvements. Next slide, Owen. Okay, so Owen mentioned in the neighborhood survey there was an interactive map, and the next couple of slides just present what we had people do was pinpoint areas within the neighborhood areas around campus that where they had concerns or ideas for things that could happen in the future. So these kind of summarize that. A lot of concerns for pedestrian safety, sidewalks, speeding cars, issues with on-street parking, other safety concerns in the neighborhood. One of the things we heard is that people really view the LeMoyne campus as an important open space area for recreation, especially the eastern edge of campus where we call it in the plan the LeMoyne Woods, adjacent to Thompson Road. So I think there are opportunities through improvements to infrastructure, sidewalks, and connectivity to campus to really provide opportunities for outdoor recreation for folks within that are easily accessible from the neighborhoods. Next slide. And when we start looking at places of pride, you'll see that eastern edge of the LeMoyne campus near Thompson Road comes up. For a lot of people use that for walking their dogs or walking in the woods or running or that sort of thing. And there also was some interest in improving community facilities, connections to the local schools, like H.W. Smith, for example, improving connectivity to even LeMoyne Plaza and some of the sidewalk areas and connectivity around that. There's things that kept coming up. Next slide. And lastly, we asked people where they are most likely to walk or run in the neighborhood. And this is something that was incorporated into infrastructure recommendations, which we're going to see. Not surprisingly, Salt Springs is a major thoroughfare for the city. Sealy Road comes up, Mountain View, and Fayette. It's Fayette Street here, are all things.
I think it's Boulevard, isn't it?
Well, Fayette
Boulevard.
Boulevard, yeah.
Yeah.
Are all areas that came up, and people, and of course the areas around Springfield Road that kind of go all the way around the LeMoyne campus. Next slide. We also looked at the state of current infrastructure, and when we talk about infrastructure for this purpose of this plan, we were really looking at sidewalks and street trees. And when in this, I think it's hard for me to see in this. Hold on, let me get my own.
I think just suffice it to say the area in yellow
is areas where we do not have existing sidewalks, and areas that are blue are areas with existing sidewalks. But even the areas with existing sidewalks, the sidewalks are not in great condition. They're primarily located closer to Salt Springs and Springfield, but even those existing systems are not in great shape. And there are some street trees throughout the Salt Springs neighborhood, specifically on the right-hand map, but it's spotty. And even the street tree system in the street trees that are there are not in great shape. So when we start to look at that Salt Springs neighborhood in comparison to similar neighborhoods with similar types of infrastructure, street trees and sidewalks, for like Eastwood, for example, and you look at the performance of the market in those two different neighborhoods, this neighborhood does not do as well. And I think the part of that is the fact that the infrastructure within the neighborhood is not in as good a shape, and the fact that you have a lot more smaller homes that don't have the amenities that people are looking for, like as an example, that 1.5 bath. Next slide. All right, so now we get into strategies. I'll go through these relatively quickly so that, but please stop me if you have questions, but I want to give some more opportunity for dialogue. So first and foremost, it's really important that we encourage investment in homes and properties so that they can be well maintained and have high levels of pride and curb appeal. This is, I think, especially important for that Salt Springs neighborhood. When we look at the housing market data, that neighborhood is not performing as well as it should be. I would say it's a neighborhood that's kind of teetering on the edge. And if we do intervene in the market, make sure that people have access to loan capital, some assistance with, how to make improvements in their home that can add value. And also targeting the few vacant properties that exist in this neighborhood, I think we can really work at strengthening and stabilizing the Salt Springs neighborhood specifically moving forward. And that goes hand in hand with promoting home ownership. Given most of the housing stock in the neighborhood around campus is single family. As I said earlier, especially again in the Salt Springs neighborhood, there has been a decline in home ownership. We think that that's in part related to the housing products that are there. People who are buying homes, they're looking for a home that at least has 1.5 bathrooms. That's why there's a $10,000 premium. So it's more likely that homes that don't meet that threshold are going to end up as investor owned. Next slide. The next series of slides or strategies here are really related to the lack of neighborhood association, lack of organization within the neighborhood around campus. The neighborhood doesn't really have a strong identity. While people like living there, they would like to see it have a stronger identity, and they would like to see some form of organization, neighborhood association, that could help them to work together to beautify the neighborhood, hold events and that sort of thing to celebrate what it has to offer. And one of the other things we heard from the survey is that people don't really understand, other than the open space resources at LeMoyne, they're not really connected to the resources that are available on campus. I think some of that is about to change with the makerspace that LeMoyne's working on, and I know that LeMoyne has a lot of different programs that they offer and are looking at offering that could help to provide resources for adjacent residents. But right now there's a disconnect. And I think the more that we can strengthen that relationship, the more the proximity to campus becomes an asset and a reason for people to choose to invest in those adjacent neighborhoods. Next slide. We did have several conversations with the leadership at H.W. Smith, and there have been ongoing relationships between LeMoyne, the education program at LeMoyne, and H.W. Smith, but those relationships kind of go up and down over time as maybe you have a faculty member that's interested or students that maybe have time available or that they're doing their student teaching. I think that there really are opportunities to strengthen and formalize those connections. There are examples of other Jesuit institutions, for example, who have adopted a local school over the long term. And what's happened to those schools is they have become places where people want to send their kids because they have, additional resources, and it becomes a reason for someone to, again, locate near campus. Lastly, LeMoyne has been working on multiple different programs that help to support workforce development across the community. But I think there's really an opportunity to be an anchor for this local neighborhood and help to connect neighborhood residents with some of the programs that LeMoyne has started to develop. Next slide. So the series of maps that I showed you that came from that interactive map resulted in the next set of strategies here. One is looking at improving bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the neighborhood, and this includes investments in the city neighborhoods as well as the adjacent town. And also to look at improving and enhancing the street tree network in those neighborhoods. And as I said, I think if you look at some similar type neighborhoods that have similar housing stock, where you have sidewalk systems that are in better condition and street tree systems that are better maintained, those houses generally sell at a premium over what we're seeing in the Salt Springs neighborhood. Next slide. All right. So some specific infrastructure recommendations. I don't know how well you can see this map on your screen, but the green areas, the green lines are areas where we've identified the addition of bicycle infrastructure to help create connections between the LeMoyne campus, the LeMoyne neighborhoods, and other adjacent areas like Erie Boulevard, for example. There's also kind of a pinkish color, which is an area where we've identified important for investing in sidewalk infrastructure, which is really the majority of the Salt Springs neighborhood adjacent to campus, but also making connections around campus and through the town of DeWitt to connect again to commercial areas along Erie Boulevard. And specifically around campus, you'll see the kind of white line. And what that's identifying is enhancements beyond just sidewalk improvements, beyond bike infrastructure, but also looking at wayfinding, street lighting, additional street trees to really celebrate the campus edge so that when people are approaching campus, you can tell that, wow, I'm someplace special. And when you approach campus now, it doesn't necessarily give you that impression. And we have a few renderings that kind of help to illustrate what we're talking about. The other thing that's on this map are some nodal points where we're indicating that's where there are important gateways, and there should be some investment in those gateways to notify a sense of arrival to the campus as well as the broader neighborhood. Next slide. So part of this improving this neighborhood is really enhancing the approach to campus itself. And that's what I was just saying. When you arrive to LeMoyne now, if you're driving up Salt Springs and you get to the corner of Salt Springs and Springfield, there's nothing that says, welcome to LeMoyne. There's no infrastructure there around the edge of LeMoyne's campus that says that place is special. And I think that that's something that's missing from this neighborhood. It's something that if we focus on that, if we enhance the area around campus, it can help to celebrate it and make people aware that that's a place, that is important to the neighborhood. Part of that is that LeMoyne owns a significant number of properties all the way around their campus, both within the town of DeWitt and within the city of Syracuse. And the recommendation is that they really focus on those properties to brand them as part of campus. So just one example of that might be the makerspace and LeMoyne Plaza that already exists. There are programs in other communities. In Geneva, for example, Hobart William Smith has something that they call theme houses, where students can band together, they form a group, let's say it's outdoor recreation or community service, and they're able to apply to campus to live off campus in a campus-owned home and be focused on that particular theme. And in turn, Hobart William Smith has invested in those properties around their campus and branded them as part of campus. So that's another way that you could accomplish that around LeMoyne. Next slide. All right, this is the last couple of slides, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Owen. So these illustrate what we're talking about when we are looking at investing in the campus edge. So this is Springfield road adjacent to campus. It's actually in the town of DeWitt, but this is existing conditions. Next slide. So proposed conditions, really focused on transit infrastructure around campus, celebrating that there is a bus route that has access to campus that provides transportation for the neighborhood, but also looking at things like bike infrastructure around Springfield Road and sidewalk infrastructure, lighting and banners to again celebrate that campus edge. This is approaching campus from basically the opposite corner. This is, we're on Springfield Road looking east towards campus. This is the point of arrival that I mentioned. So this is the existing conditions. And next slide, Owen. So we did work with CNS to look at this intersection and identify, is this an area where you could implement a roundabout, for example? There is space to do that. And, in this image, we're showing a roundabout, we're showing enhanced crosswalk infrastructure, we're showing lighting and banners around the edge of campus. There's also just behind the roundabout area, there is a sign that says LeMoyne College. And that's something that's it's missing now. You don't know that you're approaching campus. If you're not from here, you wouldn't know that that was there. So those are some ideas about how you really might celebrate that campus edge and make some improvements that calm traffic, provide infrastructure for cyclists and pedestrians that really help to improve the overall connectivity and mobility within the neighborhood. Next slide. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Owen.
And this is it. We're gonna move to the question and answer opportunity. But I think what you heard is that we've done a lot of work in this area, and it's an area that really didn't have this level of attention in recent memory. And what we found was largely encouraging, but we did find opportunities to improve and strengthen this area. It's well situated. We have an anchor institution that wants to partner. We have an important neighborhood school. We have proximity to major corridors in the East Genesee Street and Erie Boulevard. And we've got a neighborhood full of residents with a good deal of pride. And so we are working, and I think this has been mentioned earlier, but we are currently working with a variety of partners. First and foremost, LeMoyne College, but also partnerships with folks like Home Headquarters. We've begun that discussion to address some of the housing issues. We're working with operating departments on some of the infrastructure improvements. And starting to think creatively about how we begin to implement and facilitate some of these recommendations. So we appreciate this opportunity to present this all to you. We obviously are ready, willing, and able to work with you if you are interested in helping facilitate this work. I know Councilor Driscoll, unfortunately, this is all situated in the 5th District. I know he's interested. We're working closely with him. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments on what we can do. And Councilor Caldwell, I see your hand.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say this is great that we're talking about this. Someone who is very familiar with the area. I grew up on Fayetteville Boulevard and know the community very well. I can tell you that a lot of the families that lived there in 1980 are still living there.
Yeah.
A lot of them are now working poor, right? There were also families that were part of the GM, Chrysler, Carrier families who lived there and worked at the factories, and the factories left. Those houses look the exact same as they did in 1980. I can go down many streets and point out families, know the names, know who people are, can go. So to talk about this is very important because it's a neighborhood that needs to be enriched. It needs to be able to have the same resources. And when the funding comes in, that neighborhood always get missed, right? For various reasons. And also to talk about how great LeMoyne College is. I was a student at LeMoyne College, and I know how great that campus is and how great everything is there. To build this relationship with LeMoyne and the community, especially in that neighborhood, is huge. It needs to happen. I'm glad it's happening. I'm glad we're having talks about that. But also pointing out the land that LeMoyne has, that is definitely needs to be addressed. They have land that is in cross neighborhoods of people houses and between houses. So we need to make sure that the land that they have is safe. It's they're in the community, and that we're partnering, but also having those conversations about what they're doing. Even the little plaza up there that once used to be pizza, Patsy's Pizza, a store, a laundromat, all those things were there at one point, right? For the neighborhood and the community is no longer there. LeMoyne owns that. What are we doing, right? Because that's still in the neighborhood and community. So I'm glad we're having these conversations. I'm glad we're putting it out there on the table. And this is very, very dear to me. There's a lot of seniors in that neighborhood that are great people who would love to support and would love to be a part of it. I just think we just have to reach out to them and just say, hey, this is what we have, right? Because they're now the working poor, right?
Mhm.
Or the seniors that are retired and only on a fixed income. Thank you.
Before we go further, I did get a hold of Councilor Driscoll. He's having internet problems across the Atlantic, so he won't be able. But will all this be sent to all the city councilors, Owen?
Yes, I
It's
will send the, and my apologies, Counselor Hogan, for diving right into the questions. Yes, I will send an update, this presentation, and the larger plan. We'll make all of that available, to you within the, coming 24 hours.
And I want to mention, I appreciate Councilor Caldwell's comments. And so the next step would be to have a coherent strategy. I mean, we have all this information. EDR did a great job. I want to point out, of course, the council previously has approved $2 million for trees. And also we've signed on to the sidewalk program. So
Yep.
I think it's setting some of our priorities. I do want to recognize that we have other city councilors on. If anybody else wants to make a comment, they can do that right now.
I have a question. I also second Councilor Caldwell's statements and Councilor Hogan, who just brought up the sidewalk program, which I was going to mention, and also our recent master plan, urban master plan that was just completed. And I'm just wondering if EDR has looked into the details of that to see if there are plans or how that report affected the area of concern.
And Counselor, you're referencing the forestry master plan. Is that correct? Yes, that is something that we are working with both the city arborists, and these are both these issues, two of which we just mentioned, the sidewalks and the street trees, are things, as you mentioned, that the council has been proactive on in the last literally 6 months. So we are in a good position to affect change, whether it be sidewalks or street trees, and we're going to be working real closely. I don't believe Steve Harris is on the call. I know the transportation division, Neil Burke and Kevin Busa are both on the call. So we're going to be working with them very, very closely about how to identify, perhaps not how to start, but more likely where to start on these investments in this community. As Councilor Caldwell said, it's a strong neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood with residents that have a lot of pride, and bringing these resources in there. One of the things we're going to do is start talking to them about how we roll this out. At the same time, ongoing conversations with the college about some of the more programmatic things. Obviously, the college is not going to be doing neighborhood sidewalks and street trees, but facilitating those edge treatments that we just talked about, and more specifically, some of the housing related programs. And I'll defer to Deputy Mayor or Commissioner Collins, but some of the city's upcoming funding is this spring. For a variety of different funding sources, and starting to prep how we can make those funds available to folks in this neighborhood, but raise awareness of those funds for folks in this neighborhood. That being a big thing, how to bring the people to the resources. So that is something we're actively working on.
It's been stated, it is definitely a priority, first of all, to ensure that people understand what is available, and also conversations for identifying those gap populations where a loan may not be an option and they don't qualify for a grant. How can we diversify funding? Home headquarters has all the tools to implement the program. Sometimes it is the source, the funding streams and the regulations that go with it. The other thing I talked about this community, and Councilor Caldwell brought this up, is there are a lot of seniors in this community. And we talked about, and I've said this across the city, the need for estate planning for many of these homeowners to ensure that their asset and their family legacy transfers within the family or maintains the authority of the family, to ensure that these stay owner-occupied homeowner properties. And so that's a big issue across the city, but particularly I see it in this neighborhood because of the value of the property. And we don't want it going off to speculation and be used for other purposes. Lastly, I'll say housing is a huge topic, and I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm so glad that the report really talked about the traffic patterns in this community, because whether people think of it or not, this is a huge commuter kind of stretch of our city, particularly as an East Sider cutting through to get to Erie Boulevard. I travel these streets all the time, particularly that intersection that was highlighted, which is, enter at your own risk. It's just off. There's lighting there, but each intersection is off by a foot or two, and it's an interesting intersection. And that east side of the campus on on Thompson Road. So traffic patterns is a big consideration here.
Right.
So
I have a few more questions if I could. Oh,
let me just follow up for just one second on the estate planning thought. So there is not a bank, a financial institution that's near this neighborhood, that's in the neighborhood. And so I think that is also a barrier. So, I think that may be part of the reason why there's so little lending. And I don't know what the solution to that is. I know that in the past, like the Westcott Federal Credit Union has opened, branch locations in other parts of the city. I'm not sure how that's doing, but I think that is a gap for this neighborhood, and identifying a way to connect people in the neighborhood with those kinds of resources, I think would be really helpful for people to start to build credit, to make investments in their homes, and to become more economically successful.
Counselor?
yeah, thanks. One more thing about, when you mentioned that the college isn't doing sidewalks. So with the sidewalks maintenance program, colleges are required to contribute to that or not? This is probably a question for Deputy Owens or other counselors who are more privy.
And I know Neil Burke is on the call, and maybe give him a minute, him or Kevin a minute to get their thoughts together on that. There is interest, the college, and I'll defer to Steve or Fouad. The area around campus would largely be their responsibility. Obviously, the bordering campus is largely the property owner's responsibility, just like it is for all of us residents. The sidewalk out front of your property is your responsibility. That said, the intersections, the crosswalks, the street trees, the street lighting, all of that is the city's. And so by and large, those are the infrastructure improvements that need to be made, or city side. But there is definitely the intersection that the deputy mayor just mentioned is a budding campus, and I'm looking for that picture. Here's the campus you see there. There's no sidewalks there. And so how do we put sidewalks in? We know this is an area, it's adjacent to an elementary school, a public library, and a college campus, and there's no sidewalks. I mean, you don't need to be an urban planner to realize, hold on, something's missing here. So that is something that we're going to work closely with the college on. and whether that's something that we do as part of our sidewalk program or is more squarely their responsibility, that's something I think everybody has agreed is an important upcoming step.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fouad Dietz. I'm the Director of Planning for the college and campus architect, if you will. And I got to tell you, this conversation that we're having today is just so exciting because this is exactly where we thought this type of study would take us. When we brought this up to the city and to the town of DeWitt and talked about a partnership to codify all of these various parts and pieces that we're talking about today, to bring them together under an umbrella, to be able to have these kinds of strategic conversations is exactly what we were looking for. We understand that funds are limited at the city. We understand that funds are limited at DeWitt. We also are LeMoyne College. We're not SU. One of the major reasons that we wanted to embark on this study for our area, but also in addition to be a good neighbor to everybody around us, is to be able to codify this information and push forward with either existing programs or where it makes sense for us to continue to partner together for federal or state funding or foundation funding, et cetera, and be able to use the work that has been done here as a tool to show people our joint vision of how we can move forward in this neighborhood. So, you know, I'm really excited and heartened about talking about the specifics of how this impacts people directly, and talking about intersections and talking about lending and the potential of a bank in the neighborhood, because these are really all the parts and pieces of the conversations that are coming out of this neighborhood plan. So with that, I just say, you know, thank you all for your participation. I'm really heartened by the conversation. I'll turn it back to Owen.
So if there are no additional questions, obviously happy to answer them. I know we're right at that noon mark here. I'm the city's point person on this. Please, counselors, I know you all know how to get in touch with me. I will follow up with the group on the links to the plan and the presentation. And I think what you'll probably hear next from us is I am committed to providing the council an update on our progress. And that will probably be a few months from now, as we need to make some progress first. But I am happy to come back to you and give you an update on what we're doing and what that coordination looks like, both not only with internal city departments, but with some of those partners we talked about.
Owen, I'd like to thank you. I don't know if Councilor Gathers, did you have any questions at all?
No questions. Presentation, everybody's questions pretty much answered everything that I had. Just would like a copy of the presentation if I can, or, you know, copy of information sent to all of us. Other than that, I appreciate everybody for the presentation and your time today. And
I was wondering if the gentleman from DeWitt have any comments. Okay, hearing none, I would say it would be great. The council supports this. I can speak for the members of the council, especially the ones who are here. The council would, of course, be receptive to anything that you come up with, Owen, and we'll support you 100% on this. And I appreciate the people from LeMoyne being on, and all the city staff, especially the comments from the deputy mayor. So
especially when it's clear, you know, that we can support that.
I didn't want to speak for everybody, but often I do. So, so thanks everybody, and have a good afternoon.
Pat,
yes.
I did have one comment. This is Doug Miller from the town of DeWitt.
Okay, Doug.
I was just getting ready to send a note off to Owen. If you would be kind enough to send me a copy of the PowerPoint that I could share with the rest of the staff over in DeWitt, I think that would keep everybody over there in the loop. I know they're interested and intrigued by the whole process. So that would be great, Owen, if you could send that over, and then I'll share that with the rest of the group at DeWitt, and I'll copy you on that so they have your contact info if they have any questions.
Will do, Doug. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. This is hopefully what you're hearing is encouraging. I know a lot of these committee meetings are problems, but this is one that I think are issues that we are excited to work on and to improve. And your support, the full council support, Councilor Hogan, is greatly appreciated. and we'll be in touch.
And I think the other thing, some of the things that we have going on in DeWitt and followed, maybe you and I could reach out to, but, not only is it the brick and mortar things that DeWitt is interested to support LeMoyne College and the surrounding neighborhoods about, but it's also the social and demographic contributions there. In the past, we've been involved with, some of the issues surrounding the community with the Klim Center and, the JCC and some other things on our side of the line, if you want to call it. So, moving forward, if there's anything that comes up that way, between LeMoyne and the city of Syracuse, by all means, reach out to me because, we're pretty progressive and, we want to be part of the community and we've got a bunch of projects that a lot of other communities don't really have going on. But just let us know and I'll keep everybody on our side in the loop.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Owen. I'd like to thank everybody who was on this meeting. It was it was a great meeting, really was. So everybody have a nice afternoon.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.